can a building be racist?
Yes.
Yes. Well, at least that's the conclusion of the people in charge of Welsh libraries. So SILIP in Wales have told librarians that when they're organising their anti-racism training sessions, apparently they must do a lot of them for them to generate a whole report about this. They should avoid venues with links to colonialism and the slave trade. Now you might think, what venues have links to colonialism and the slave trade? Helpfully, the Welsh government has actually produced a whole report on this and has given a colour-coded sort of system of, if it's red, then they're very, very racist. No, sorry, it's red if they're named after someone directly culpable for slavery and colonialism, and then there's amber, and then there's green. Tom, what have you made of this?
That blacklist is amazing. It's like a whole spreadsheet people can check out. And I think my favourite example was they go down the list and they talk about the whole village of Nelson, which only gets an amber because it's actually named after the pub in the village called Nelson, rather than directly named after him. So therefore, it gets off.
Once removed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a village of 4,600 people.
4,600,
all been condemned as racist. You should not go there if you're a librarian.
It's so fun. I mean, especially it reminds you what a grift this is as well. So this particular report, which is I think the plan of it is to tackle systemic racism within the Welsh library sector. So they've got to have all these training sessions for the staff and whatnot. It's like £130,000 project, I think. And I know that's money down the back of the sofa as far as even local government is concerned. But I'm sure you ask any Welsh person, they'd rather that was spent on a handful of care workers than like forcing Mfanwy from Merthyr Tydfil to interrogate her white privilege every so often. It's absolutely crazy. But this has been going on for some time now, and it's again, all of this is basically a sort of legacy of the BLM mania. The original audit of all of these racist localities and buildings was something which was initiated, I think, in 2020. It certainly came out around 2021, and we're still living with the consequences of that, which at the very least is, whilst it's quite expensive, is a non-stop source of amusement. Because it's overreached to such a degree that I think almost anyone serious knows that this has gone too far now.
I'm just fascinated by the idea that people thought that there was a serious systemic racism problem in the library sector, and that little old librarians need to be re-educated.
That's where the main problem.
Or that the job of librarians is not to make sure that the public have access to books that they might read and kind of find interesting, or I get some ideas from or take home. But instead, no, the job of librarians is to make sure that they're carefully curating the libraries to avoid any kind of anti-racist content. You wonder how. I mean, I haven't been into a library in Wales, but you wonder if you like try and go there, and they're probably taking some of these books, like they're subtly kind of, I don't know, moving them to the back, or if they're always on these anti-racism trainings, you wonder for the kind of the actual purpose of what libraries is, which is to allow people access to information, and the degree to which even that kind of imperative to control what people think and see is kind of permeated into even such quaint things as like local libraries. Is it shows you how far the rot has gone.
Definitely, and we should say it's. A lot of this is in response to direct response to government policy. This is part of the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan 2030. Yeah. So Wales is promising that by 2030 it will have eliminated all racism and it will be officially a systemically anti-racist country.
And they're starting with the libraries.
But they're also, this touches on basically every aspect of Welsh life. So it includes nursery and childcare facilities, child play centres, doctors' offices, public transport. If you can think of it, if it touches the Welsh state in some way, it has to be anti-racist and scrubbed of of the racist legacy allegedly of Wales. There is no limit to this, is there, Tom? I mean, there's no,
No, not at all. I mean, it's the whole ideology is kind of softly totalitarian, like quietly totalitarian. It must touch absolutely everything. There is a sense that no venue must be rid of any of this kind of propaganda, that there's no space for it not to exist. And whilst it's all kind of a bit tin pot, a bit silly, the impulse behind it is ridiculous. And I think what you also see in a place like Wales is, it's not to say that like Welsh Labour are like at the top of the party are obsessed with this stuff and can quote you chapter of verse of Robin DiAngelo and whatever. But the problem is all this is outsourced to these kind of grifters / ideologues who make a pretty penny just propagating their insane divisive ideas on an unsuspecting public. And so you get the effect of all the divisiveness and all the toxicity without it necessarily even being intentional. Almost they just see, this is a nice anti-racist thing to do, so we'll farm it out to these people and do it. So it's often why you see the disjoint between often quite boring politicians ordering quite insane things to take place. It's because
Mark
they're not
Drakeford
really.
initiative.
No, exactly. Who was insane in many respects.
Yeah, well,
But also boring.
Yeah.
it's this kind of there's no book left unexamined mentality that probably the only time lots of these people pick up any of these tomes is to kind of examine whether there's something racist content lurking. But it also speaks to look, there are plenty of decent arguments for devolution or all the rest of it, but it speaks to the way in which this has just become a mechanism for all of the worst kind of ideas to enter into our discourse. The Welsh government setting up some kind of task force or some kind of group, and they don't have maybe kind of really serious powers over what goes on in Wales. And so there is this kind of element of people inventing things that they have to get obsessed about because that's what justifies the Welsh government's existence. It's not that it might make lives for people in Wales better. It's not going to improve the economy or anything like that. But
or for the 6% of non-white Welsh people.
Yeah, it's not there to do that, not to deliver any of the kind of traditional things that government's supposed to deliver, but instead you can kind of sit comfortable. Even as you're driving along at 20 miles an hour, you can know that you're happily in an anti-racist country.
You just lost your job at the steel mill, driving at 20 miles an hour, but it's all good.